Roch Parisien from MyMusic.com. We're down at Ottawa Bluesfest with Our Lady Peace. Welcome, guys. Can you just do the roll call for everybody here?
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Duncan.
I'm Rain, I sing.
I'm Steve, guitar.
All right, guys. Now, in a recent article in the National Post, something caught my eye where, Rain, you were saying, if you don't like the group but listen and say, you know what, this isn't a bad record, I'm good with that. Talking about your new album, Curve.
Duncan, you wrote it.
No,
But he's quoting you.
But yeah, I mean,
What did you mean by that?
What did you mean?
I think Curve is this this animal to us that has kind of gone past maybe not our expectations, but just when we went in the studio, you talk about what you want to do on a record, and it's very rare that you get close to that, or at least for us. And I think this is the closest we've come to the things we love about this band and that we aspire to do musically and creatively. So I think it'd be hard for someone. I'd like to sit down with someone who says this record sucks, because I don't think it can get there. Do you know what I mean?
I totally agree. Totally agree. I'll be honest. I've been following you guys since the beginning of your career on the music scene, and there have been periods where I have not been a big fan of the band, where I felt that I appreciated what you guys were doing, but I wasn't passionate about it because I felt there's something a little mannered, a little
controlled,
controlled, forced. There's a wall here between
Yes.
the band and the listener.
Yep.
I'm not really getting through to the real band.
Yep.
And this album is not that.
Yes.
I was really, really happy with when I heard this song.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just said it, and that's how we feel. Pretty much the same way. So there's a pride and there's I think a strength to this band right now because of this record, for sure.
So how did you get there? What was the breakthrough?
I think there just comes a time when it's like you have to say enough, and I think we've been, the last 10 years, we've had these ups and downs where we've, been with different producers, we've experimented. I think Gravity, in a weird way, even that was such a big record for us, and there was 2 huge songs on that record, it was as much as an experiment as Spiritual Machines, in the sense that we went to Maui to work with Bob Roch. We kind of went on his journey of like stripping everything down, taking out all the layers and all the maybe experimentalness of the band that was on Spiritual Machines. Like, that was a complete left turn for us, and it wasn't ever meant to define what we are. We just tried it, and I don't know if we necessarily think, no matter how many records it sold, it represents what we are, essentially. So now you get to record number 8, and I think we've just had enough. We're like, we have to make a really steadfast decision on what we see ourselves as creatively. And it was about getting back to being more experimental rhythmically, melodically, getting back to a lot of guitar riff based music, and this is as close as we've come in 10 years.
Okay. The single from the album was called Heavyweight. That fits in, of course, with the cover of George Chevallo on the cover. And I think it's also fair to say it's a bit of a theme that sort of threads its way through the album. You get the sense that despite the success you guys have had, you still feel you're fighting for something. You almost see yourself as underdogs.
We've always been the underdog, I think. Yeah, from the beginning. From the moment we signed a record deal, we hadn't played many shows, so I remember people thinking we were some put together band by Sony. We were never part of the cool hip Toronto scene, so it was always like fighting from day one, to really identify what this band was. And for us, it's always, the connection we make live with fans has always been the way we've defined ourselves. But unfortunately, with the media and everything else, there's that's a very small part, unfortunately, So there's always been a struggle. And I think the fact that we're able to make Curve now just shows the kind of, I guess parallels the will and determination of a fighter, and especially someone like George Chevallo, who we have immense respect and admiration for, and was kind enough to kind of be a part of this.
Although looking back on the earlier period, you sort of agreed with me earlier as well that perhaps some of the media criticism at the time wasn't totally off base, and that there was a little bit of this gloss, this kind of we weren't really seeing the real band at times.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? It's all we don't. I guess.
Was there some manipulation going on? Were the band strings being pulled at any?
No.
It was just us. We were in a position, and we also have to realize that this, at that time in music, I mean, we were on a major label. We were dealing with, major heads saying, we're not hearing something that in this kind of a thing, and you kind of revisit songs, and just the kind of thing that just doesn't really make sense. But we would, bulk out our record with, the great feeling, and then there was always an element of stress and concern over a handful of songs, and that kind of carried its way through not just the genre of music that was popular at the time, but just our headset and mindset of like our gut instinct just kind of going away from us by virtue of working over and over and over and over.
We were seduced by Bob Roch. Do you know what I mean? Like we went out there, and he's an amazing guy. He's a great spirit. He's this fun, really talented producer. And so when someone gets in there with you and starts changing your sound a bit, and it sounds huge to these speakers, and you're in Maui, and it was a really great experience. And I think, like Jeremy said, I think there are some. I have to look at the record. There's some amazing moments on this record. I think Innocent is always a song we love that defines us. Bring Back the Sun, and not much else. But it was one of those things where we just went with it, And unfortunately, that record was so big, what happens is it starts to redefine who you are. And I think in our heads, we're like, it's not a big deal. It's always about a body of work for this band. It's never about one song or a video. But that record and that time frame, those like 4 or 5 years that we spent working with Bob and making records with him, really, it was, like I said, for us, it was just an experiment. For some people, it was a disappointment.
You changed your vocal style as well at one point, sort of dropping reliance on what people would refer to as your trademark falsetto.
Yeah.
Was that sort of a conscious idea of not being caught up in a formula as well? Something like that?
Yeah, it's weird. I wish there was a documentary made on making those Gravity and Healthy and Paranoid Times with Bob, because there was a lot of songs that had falsetto. It's just really whatever the 11 songs that ended up on Gravity didn't have much of it. And so, I think that's probably a part of what shocked people and felt like what happened, this band totally, put dirt on their past, and are starting this new thing that we don't like. But
but you could have gone back to that for Curve, and you also chose not to.
Chose not to?
Well, it's not as emphasized as it was in.
Well, I think the important thing with Curve, for us to understand and finally really grasp, and for our fans is why this record works and why we're the best this band has ever been right now, is because there's nothing on this record that's forced. So I think that was one of the things that with working with Bob and doing those records, we were forcing things, and it was a bit of a struggle for him to kind of rein us into what he saw us as. And it's funny, I remember being in Vancouver after Gravity, and Bob was at that show in Vancouver. We were playing at the where the Canucks play, that arena, and we were sound checking, and we were doing some of our older stuff and maybe a cover of something. And Bob came up and he's like, "Wow, there's a lot of falsetto in your stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, man." Yeah, and it was one of those moments where I think he finally realized, his perception of us changed at that point. But it was that whole thing was probably too far gone at that point. But
how's the reception been to the new one? Do you feel the message is getting through?
Better than ever, yeah. I mean, when stuff works live right away, there's a tangible thing about this record and these songs that people just get it. They don't even need to know the songs, and we just experienced that in the tour started before the record was out, and you could see it in people's faces. I think this real kind of this energy that we haven't maybe seen on the last few records, and we just did some shows in the UK. Same thing. It's like people really there's a guttural feeling to this record that people are connecting with.
How does it translate live?
I'm not answering any more questions about that.
For people that haven't seen the band live, and let's go to the instrumental players here, the rest of the band. People who haven't seen the band live since say, your hit albums from yesteryear, and they come out to Bluesfest tonight. How has the new album changed the live show of the band?
It's changed a ton. I mean, how has it changed?
Or evolved?
All right.
I mean, things were firing in the studio on a different level making this record than they ever have. I think, we went through some hard times making Healthy and Paranoid Times, and we sort of had to learn, when we made Burn Burn, it was like we had to learn how to be a band again. I know Rain has said, and I agree. But we sort of had that blueprint. It was there for this record. So the channels of communication were very open. The ideas were flowing more than ever. And I think you hear that in every part, every drum part, every bass part, every guitar part. And, so a lot of those things, a lot of the songs were happening in the room. It wasn't all about a bunch of overdubs and everything. So when you develop songs like that, it really translates live. If a song is largely put together in the studio, a lot of times it doesn't come across live. So these songs, with just the 4 or 5 of us playing them, it's been bang on. People have gotten it right away because largely that's how they were written and recorded.
And I think there's something to be said. We haven't talked about it, but Jason Later, a friend of ours from Los Angeles, that helped with this record, helped co-produce this. He was pretty instrumental in pushing the musicalities out. He's a very musical cat. So having him in the studio, you always had that kind of fifth voice saying, no, go further. Like, you guys know what a 7th chord or a 9th chord or diminished or an inversion. Like, let's inject more of that. And so I think musically, this record is really fun to play. Like Window Seat, I'm still trying to get all those chords down. Like we haven't been able to play that song because there's just like 1,500 chords while I'm trying to sing that melody, and it's one of those things that's an amazing challenge as a musician. So when you're having fun just playing the actual parts, and then you put on top of the fact that we all love these songs, it's just, I think it'd be hard for that not to translate to everybody.
Well, it's a great record, guys. You should be really proud.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to hearing how it translates tonight at Bluesfest.
Cool.
Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Roch.
Thank you.